On September 11, 2001, 19 terrorists conducted 4 flight missions on United States planes and attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon with a failed attack on the White House. 2,996 people died. These attacks are collectively known as 9/11. Seven days later, another terrorist attack that is often blown over was launched internally. This attack is known as the Anthrax scare. Anthrax is an acute disease caused by the bacterium Bacillus anthracis. Like many other members of the genus Bacillus, B. anthracis can form dormant endospores, often referred to as spores, that are able to survive in harsh conditions for decades or even centuries. Such spores can be found on all continents, even Antarctica. When spores are inhaled, ingested, or come in contact with a skin lesion on a host, they may become reactivated and multiply rapidly. On October 4th, Bob Stevens of American Media News was hospitalized for anthrax inhalation. The next day, Stevens died at the tender age of 63 after his body refused the antibiotics. On October 8th, more anthrax was found in the Florida offices of American Media, and the building was subsequently shut down. The following day, the FBI began investigating the incidents. On October 12th, 8 days after the initial attacks, an NBC employee tested positive for anthrax poisoning in New York City. October 15th, 3 days later, Senate Majority Leader Tom Dashley informed reporters that anthrax was found in his office. 1 day later, the 7-month-old son of an ABC producer tested positive for anthrax poisoning after developing a rash. 2 days later, on the 18th, a CBS employee and a New Jersey postal worker tested positive. On the 23rd, 2 postal workers in D.C. were confirmed dead of anthrax poisoning. On the 26th, a U.S. State Department mailroom staffer was hospitalized, and another New Jersey postal worker tested positive 2 days later. On the 30th, a New Jersey patient was reported as the 15th case. On Halloween, Kathy Nguyen, a hospital employee, died of anthrax poisoning. Almost a month later, on November 21st, Ottilie Lundgren, a 94-year-old Connecticut citizen, died of anthrax inhalation. Not until the next year did the FBI search the residence of Stephen Hatfill, a scientist who worked in the government's biodefense lab in Fort Detrick, Maryland, and was named a person of interest in August of 2002.
Hatfill did not do what the Justice Department and the FBI intended, break under the pressure. Instead, he went on the offensive.
I want to look my fellow Americans directly in the eye and declare to them, I am not the anthrax killer. I know nothing about the anthrax attacks. I had absolutely nothing to do with this terrible crime. John Ashcroft has now twice publicly told the American people that I am a person of interest in last year's anthrax attacks. Mr. Ashcroft has not only violated Justice Department regulations and guidelines, which bind him as the nation's top law enforcement official, but in my view, he has broken the 9th commandment. Thou shalt not bear false witness.
On July 13, 2004, almost 2 years after being filed a person of interest, Hatfill sued the New York Times and the Justice Department for defamation. Hatfill won the case against the Justice Department on June 27, 2008, and received a $5.8 million settlement. However, his case against the New York Times was dismissed in 2007. A month after the government settlement, Bruce E. Ivins, another government scientist who was also an FBI suspect in the 2001 scare, committed suicide.
A federal prosecutor said U.S. Army scientist Bruce Ivins was the sole person responsible for the anthrax attacks in the United States 7 years ago. Ivins killed himself last week before he could be charged. U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Taylor presented the government's case against him.
It's compelling evidence, and our view is we are confident it would have helped us prove this case against Dr. Ivins beyond reason.
Although Ivins is named the Anthrax killer, there are unanswered questions, specifically pertaining to 9/11. Experts at the Johns Hopkins Center for Civilian Biodefense Strategies concluded that one of the 19 9/11 hijackers, Ahmed al-Haznawi, had likely been exposed to anthrax. Al-Haznawi and another man arrived in the emergency room of a Fort Lauderdale, Florida hospital, presenting an ugly, dark lesion on his leg that he said he developed after bumping into a suitcase 2 months earlier. Christos Sonis thought the injury was curious, cleaned it, and prescribed an antibiotic. After September 11, federal investigators found the medicine prescribed by Sonis among the possessions of al-Haznawi. Sonis came to believe that al-Haznawi's lesion was consistent with anthrax. Such a conclusion, of course, raises the possibility that the hijackers were handling anthrax and were the perpetrators of the anthrax letter attacks. Several 9/11 hijackers, including al-Haznawi, lived in Boca Raton, Florida, near American Media Incorporated, workplace of the first victim of the anthrax attacks. They also attended flight school there. Some of the hijackers rented apartments from a real estate agent who was the wife of an editor of The Sun, a publication of American media. Further, a pharmacist in Delray Beach, Florida, stated he had told the FBI that 2 of the 9/11 hijackers, Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehi, entered the pharmacy seeking medicine to treat irritations on Mr. Atta's hands. If the 9/11 hackers were involved in the anthrax attacks, they would have probably have needed an accomplice to mail the tainted letters, since the 4 recovered anthrax letters were postmarked on September 18th and November 9th. Ivins could have been this accomplice. The letters to the New York Post and Tom Brockwell contained a hidden message. The letters read, 9/11/01. This is next. Take penicillin now. Death to America. Death to Israel. Allah is great. According to the FBI summary report, when they lifted out the bolded letters, investigators got TTT, AAT, and TAT, an apparent hidden message. The 3-letter groups are codons, meaning that each sequence of 3 nucleic acids will code for a specific amino acid. From this analysis, 2 possible hidden messages emerged. The first one, FNY, a verbal assault on New York, and the second one, PAT, the nickname of Dr. Ivins' former colleague. In addition to these questions raised on the issue of terrorism, the news that the United States had possession of biological weapons was brought to the media. Biological agents can be spread through the air, through water, or in food. Terrorists may use biological agents because they can be extremely difficult to detect and do not cause illness for several hours to several days. Some bioterrorism agents, like the smallpox virus, can be spread from person to person, and some, like anthrax, cannot. United States possession of these weapons also brings in controversy over the legitimacy of the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003. The United States offered intelligence from the CIA and British MI5 to the United Nations Security Council, suggesting that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction include nuclear, radiological, chemical, biological, or other weapons that can kill and bring significant harm to a large number of humans, or cause great damage to human-made structures, natural structures, or the biosphere. Therefore, anthrax is considered a weapon of mass destruction. If production of such weapons is considered grounds for a military invasion and launched war upon a country, according to the United Nations Security Council, then the United States broke UN regulations by producing anthrax and are just as guilty as Iraq.